It was 2:13 a.m. when the pounding on the door shattered the silence. Serena thought it was a mistake. Maybe a neighbor. Maybe a noise complaint. But when the shouts came, "Hands where I can see them!" Fear took over. A nurse just home from a late shift, a phone in her hand mistaken for a gun, and upstairs, her husband Carter, a decorated Navy SEAL, woke to a nightmare no battlefield had ever prepared him for, because tonight, justice wore a badge, and the target was his family. It had been one of those long nights that only nurses understand. Serena finished her shift at St. Mary's Hospital, her scrubs faintly scented with antiseptic and baby powder. She'd spent 12 straight hours saving other people's lives. Now all she wanted was to be home, to feel safe, to rest beside her husband. Home was their small two-story house on Maple Ridge Lane, a quiet street in a proud working-class neighborhood. Family photos lined the hallway. Carter in his Navy uniform, medals polished, his arm around Serena. Their daughter Maya, grinning with missing front teeth, holding a soccer ball bigger than her head. Carter had been home for only a week. After 15 years as a Navy SEAL, deployments, late-night calls, classified missions, he was finally done. He promised Serena that this time he was staying for good. No more danger, no more battles, no more sleeping with one eye open. That night, the house was calm. The kind of peace Carter hadn't known in years. The soft hum of the refrigerator, the gentle rhythm of Serena's footsteps as she entered quietly, careful not to wake their daughter upstairs. She set down her keys, took a breath, and smiled. It was good to be home. Outside, the street looked empty, until a pair of headlights appeared at the corner. The car idled too long, engine rumbling low. She didn't notice. Not yet. Carter, half asleep upstairs, felt something stir in his gut, that instinct that never really goes away. But he brushed it off. This was home now. Safe, civilized. He didn't know that within minutes their world would be ripped apart, not by war or enemies overseas, but by uniforms, flashing lights, and fear wearing a badge. The night was still, too still. Serena slipped out of her car, the porch light flickering softly against the midnight sky. She fumbled for her keys, unaware of the black SUV that had rolled to a stop 2 houses down. Inside that SUV, 2 officers sat. One calm, the other itching for action. Officer Daniels, the older of the 2, had been on edge all week after a call about suspicious activity in the area. A shadow at a window. A car door left open. Nothing proven, but enough for him to feel justified. He saw Serena's silhouette by the doorway. A black woman in scrubs, reaching into her bag. In his mind, the pieces twisted into a threat. "Possible suspect," he muttered into his radio. Moving toward the door. "Might be armed." Serena never heard the transmission. She only heard the slam of car doors and the thunder of boots on pavement. "Police! Hands where we can see them!" Her body froze. The keys clattered to the porch. Her heart hammered in her chest as beams of blinding light cut through the darkness. She turned, hands raised. The badge glare flashed off the metal of her hospital ID, but all Officer Daniels saw was a glint. Inside, Carter jolted awake. That instinct, that quiet, trained awareness, exploded back into focus. He heard shouting, the tone he knew too well. Panic mixed with power. He grabbed his phone and moved toward the stairs, his pulse steady but rising. Outside, Serena tried to speak. "Officers, please. I'm a nurse. I live here. Drop the weapon." Daniels barked. I don't have one." Her phone slipped from her hand, hitting the porch with a sharp crack. Daniels saw the movement, saw the shine, and fired. The sound tore through the street, echoing across mailboxes and windows. A single, deafening shot. Serena dropped, clutching her shoulder. Not fatal, but enough to leave her gasping, stunned, in disbelief. Neighbors stirred. Porch lights flicked on. Curtains shifted. Upstairs, Carter's training snapped into full command mode. He moved fast, grabbing a jacket, not even realizing he was barefoot. As he reached the top of the stairs, his daughter Maya peeked from her room, eyes wide with confusion. "Stay here," he whispered. "Don't move, no matter what you hear." Downstairs, the chaos continued. Daniels moved closer, gun still raised. His partner, Officer Reeves, hesitated, seeing blood spread across Serena's sleeve, realizing too late this wasn't what it looked like. "Daniels, she's hurt. We need EMS. Secure the scene," Daniels shouted. "Where's the male suspect?" "There's always a second one." Inside, Carter reached the living room window and froze at the sight of his wife on the ground, blood on her arm, surrounded by flashing lights. He felt something deeper than rage, a controlled, surgical kind of focus. The same kind he used on missions. He opened the door slowly, his voice steady. "That's my wife." Immediately, rifles turned toward him. "Hands up." He raised them, calm and deliberate. "You've made a mistake." But to Daniels, it wasn't a mistake. It was control. His world divided neatly into two kinds of people, those who obey and those who don't. "Get down!" Carter didn't flinch. His gaze locked on Serena, her lips moving, whispering something he couldn't hear. Then, a sound from behind him, small feet on the stairs. Maya, Daniels's eyes widened, hand tightening on the trigger. Carter's instincts screamed. "No!" The scene froze in a single, unbearable second. An officer trembling, a father shielding, a child caught between them. And in that silence before the next heartbeat, one truth became clear. This wasn't a battlefield, but it was still war. The world seemed to stop. Carter stood in the doorway, barefoot, shirt clinging to his chest, arms raised high, staring down a line of drawn guns aimed straight at him. Red and blue lights painted his face in chaos. His wife was bleeding on the porch. His daughter was halfway down the stairs, frozen in terror. "Don't move!" Daniels shouted again, voice cracking now, adrenaline blurring his judgment. His finger twitched near the trigger. One wrong breath away from disaster. Carter's mind ran at lightning speed. Years of training, hundreds of operations. But this was different. Overseas, he'd fought men who wore uniforms of war. Here, his enemy wore the same flag he had sworn to protect. He could feel the heat of the laser sight on his chest, the same chest that carried his bronze star, his purple heart, his sealed trident earned through blood, brotherhood, and sacrifice. "I said, get down," Daniels barked. "I'm not your enemy," Carter replied, his voice steady, almost calm. But reason didn't matter. Fear had taken over. Behind the flashing lights, a camera phone blinked red, a neighbor recording from their porch. The world was watching now. Reeves, the younger officer, stepped forward. His voice shook. "Sergeant!" "He's unarmed." "We need to lower our weapons. Stand down!" Daniels roared, refusing to yield. Carter could see it. The tremor in the man's hands, the panic in his eyes. He'd seen that look before, in combat zones. Soldiers on the brink of doing something they could never take back. Serena's weak voice broke through the chaos. "Please, he's my husband." That moment cracked something in the air. Daniels hesitated. A long second passed. Then, with a deep, commanding voice that cut through the noise, Carter spoke again. "Check your aim, officer, because the next shot you take will define your life." The tension snapped like a live wire. Reeves dropped his weapon first, then another, then another. Daniels stood alone, still trembling, still holding the gun, realizing the truth. He hadn't just aimed at a suspect, he'd aimed at a hero. When the guns finally lowered, silence filled the night. Only the sound of Serena's shallow breathing cut through the air. Paramedics arrived minutes later, but to Carter, every second felt like an eternity. Serena survived. The bullet had missed anything vital, but it had pierced something deeper. Their faith in the very system they'd trusted. In the days that followed, the footage from the neighbor's phone went viral. Millions watched the moment a decorated Navy SEAL was held at gunpoint on his own porch. Hashtags filled the internet. News anchors called it a tragedy of perception. But for Carter and Serena, it was more than perception. It was pain. The investigation came fast. Officer Daniels was suspended, then charged. His partner Reeves testified. The department promised reform, training, accountability, the usual words. But Carter knew change doesn't come from promises. It comes from proof. 2 months later, he stood before the cameras not as a victim, but as a voice. "I've faced enemies overseas," he said, calm and direct. "But none of them wore the same badge that was supposed to protect my family. If this can happen to us, to a military family, to a nurse, to a man who served this nation, what happens to the ones who don't have a uniform, or a camera, or a voice?" Serena, her shoulders still healing, nodded beside him. "We're not here for revenge. We're here for accountability, so no one else has to bleed just to prove they belong in their own home." The story sparked a wave of police reform discussions nationwide. But beyond the politics and headlines, one truth echoed in every living room that watched. Safety shouldn't depend on skin color. Carter returned to his quiet life. But now, every morning when he folded the flag on his porch, it meant something different. It was no longer a symbol of perfection, but of perseverance, because in America, justice isn't automatic. It's earned, one painful truth at a time. The question isn't if it'll happen again, Carter says at the end of his interview. It's who'll have the courage to stop it when it does. Don't miss more powerful real-life stories. Hit subscribe now.